we have got in Afghanistan, we had a situation there. The Americans came, the NATO troops came there. After September 11, 2001, we had the Taliban government that was removed. I don't know how much time is there. But anyway, Taliban government that was removed from there. And now, probably by July 2011, the withdrawal of troops is going to start. What is the cost? What is the deal? Where is India in that deal? When in 2001 Operation Endurance was launched and America wanted support, it made two different types of offers to India and to Pakistan. It told India, you are the biggest democracy, we need your help. You are the biggest stakeholder, the biggest army, the biggest economy in the region. Please stand by us and support us. We told them, you go ahead in Nepal, in Afghanistan, we stand by you. They went to Pakistan and they said, you are supporting the Taliban, and that is what the statement given by Armitage, and then later quoted by Musharraf in his book is, if you do not stop it and cooperate with us, we will bomb you to the Stone Age. They also decided to cooperate. Both cooperated. Pakistan cooperated by giving satisfaction to the Americans to the extent it could maintain, expand, make more deeper its contacts and have its own people in Taliban, in Al-Qaeda, and bring all of them to Pakistan from Afghanistan, and it is known as the Quetta Shura because it is based near Quetta, including Osama bin Laden, Al-Jawahiri, Al-Latifi, everyone. Americans kept on knowing it, kept on putting them this thing, but kept on weaponizing them, kept on giving them money, kept on giving them superior equipment, the equipment that could be used only against India, kept on giving them the transferring the technology, and $10 billion from 2001 to 2008, and they promised $15 billion up to 2015. But that is not the biggest reward. Then comes the 16th December declaration by Obama, in which he declares that we are going to quit and we are going to have a conference, international conference in London, first in Turkey and then in London, where we are going to decide the modalities, what should be the regime, what should be the system that will come. Everybody is invited. China is invited, Turkey is invited, Russia is invited, Iran is invited. India is the only country that's not invited. Telling that you are not the stakeholder. So India was not the stakeholder because the Pakistan said that we do not want any Indian interest in Afghanistan. Because the Indians had been making the bridges, schools, hospitals in Afghanistan, whereas they had been arming, weaponizing, giving support, and playing the double game with the Americans, and doing both. You know, they have got their people in Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, or they've got their people in Jalaluddin Haqqani, and all these groups, Ismail Khan in Herat, all these people had been financed and this thing by them, and now Pakistan wants to bring them in power. Firstly, in collaboration with Karzai, and after the Karzai goes and he falls his natural this thing, they have a Taliban government there. The deal is that Pakistan will underwrite that there will be no Western targets that are hit, and West will be made safe from Islamic terrorism. West will not ask questions about two things. What is the internal governance in Afghanistan, how Islamic, how non-Islamic, how cruel to women, how cruel to children it is. That is their business, let them do it as Islam ordered them to do. And West will not question what use the Pakistanis are going to make of all these covert apparatus of money, manpower, equipment, everything that they have built over the years, and which are the new areas of jihad that are going to be opened. whether it is in Kashmir or it is in India. Obviously, if it cannot be West, it can be only there or in the moderated democratic Islamic countries. So that is what India is heading for. That is after this, after it is outsourced to Pakistan, after India loses on any role in deciding what sort of a government and what sort of a dispensation will be there in Afghanistan, India will be in a much more difficult position. Added to that will be the pan-Islamic mood and the pan-Islamic ideology that is developing. Wahhabism that is making new inroads. The indigenous form of tolerant Islam getting onto the back burner. With a large amount of, say, illegal immigration from Bangladesh. No, they are the realities. In the name of universal brotherhood, we can all say that, yes, we can obliterate the national boundaries. After all, we are all the citizens of this universe. The Mother Earth is our, this thing, when we get up in the morning, we say that, oh Mother, forgive us, we are putting our feet on you. You are our Mother Earth. And the Mother Earth starts from Arizona to Atlanta, everywhere. But to my motherland is my Mother Earth is my motherland. Universalism and nationalism. Universalism and nationalism do not go together. Let us not confuse ourselves. You can never kill an enemy that you cannot identify. Define him first. If you cannot define him, you can never vanquish him. Then the question comes, then what to do? What should be our aim? Our aim should be that universal brotherhood must be made a reality. Everything that comes in the way of it must be destroyed, must be degraded. And it can be degraded only by force, by strength, by being powerful, economically, militarily, collectively, and the national resolve, the national will has got to be built for that. And this is not what I am telling. This is what was told to this country thousands and thousands of years back by no other smaller person than Lord Krishna. What is all that we have bequeathed in our, what is our civilizational heritage? That is what Lord Krishna had said. He is your brother, so what? First remove the adharma. Then we will see whether you want to conquer rule or you don't want to rule. It is only to establish that rule of righteousness. It is only to have that universal brotherhood. That is, we have to fight and win. Thank you, gentlemen.